Okay, let's do a quick shader tutorial. I'm going to scale this out S and then X and 2. Scale it. I'm going to make a little, what we call a sink here in Ireland. Maybe a basin. There's lots of names for it, but let's see. So if you hit tab and go to edit mode and hit number 3 for face, select, and we click on the top face. We're going to inset with I, maybe 0.3. And I'm going to scale this out in the x-axis, S and then X, until it's kind of uniform. And then I'm going to extrude it down with E, not too far, maybe to here. And then tab back to object mode. Control 5 to add a subdivision surface modifier. And right click shade smooth to make it go smooth. Now we want to have some, I'm going to add some loop cuts on this. So if we hit tab and control R and we click and drag this to the edge, kind of go a lot straighter at that end. And then we might add another one somewhere here, control R, click, and then I suppose just change the shape to whatever you like. And when you're finished, we'll have a look at the shading tab. So on the shading tab, I'm going to go ceramics here. Generally, I do a lot of work here with just roughness and metallic. So I'm going to bring the roughness down to 0. And you see it's already shiny. And then bring the metallic up slightly, even though it's not metal. Just add a slight metallic feel to give a bit of a shine, a bit of a ceramic glaze feel. That's pretty much it for a ceramic shader. But if we wanted to add some radioactive emission, we're going to add a second shader here. So click in here, Shift A, and we would search for emission. So we have two shaders here. The title bar is green, or the bar at the top is green. And we're going to mix the two shaders together. So we're going to add a mix shader. And we're going to put the emission shader in as 1. And we're going to put this BSDF, the standard shader, in here. And we're going to move the material output over here and add the shader directly into material output. Now for the emission, let's say we want to go green and we want a high strength, maybe 25. And well, we're going to control this. So the factor here, if it was 0, it will use the top shader. If it's 1, it will, let me just drag this over. If it's 1, it will use the bottom shader, but we want to control this factor using some noise. So we're going to add a noise texture, and almost always when we have a noise texture, we're nearly always going to put in a color ramp. So we're going to add a color ramp. So the factor goes to the factor. Let me try that again. And the color goes to the factor here. And what we want to do is we want to drag these sliders together until we have something like this. So now we have an emission shader mixed with I suppose a ceramic shader, and we can control the scale over here on the noise texture, make it much larger, much smaller, and we can add a bit of detail. We can distort it if we want to go completely psychedelic, but generally I'll leave the distortion at 0. And that's pretty much it. So in the layout, I'll open up a rendered. I like to work with Eevee sometimes just because my computer is a bit slow. And we go into the scene area here, the render properties, and I turn on bloom. Bloom always makes emission look amazing. Ambient occlusion is always good. Depending on what you have in your scene, you can add some reflections, refraction. It really starts to look much better then. And you can, again, you can control all the settings here. And that's pretty much it. Shading tab, you can mix everything from entire shaders to just mixing colors. If you use a mix RGB node, for example, but almost always then, if you have a noise texture, essentially what the noise texture does is it just brings out colored noise. So you almost always need a black and white color ramp just to bring it down. Now, if you wanted these spots to be a bit more solid, I suppose, without the soft edges, you can go from linear to constant. And yeah, if you wanted to do some spots on the side of a cow, or I don't know, a map or something like that. If you want to do a world map, you can mix a blue and a green, but you don't need to mix entire shaders to do that. You can just mix the colors with mix RGB. But in this case, I'm mixing one shiny shader with one emission shader. So that's why I'm using a mix shader. That's it.